Agnes is telling me to stop being silly.
Tia Poppy's being very silly. It's taken us a lot of time to get to this recording point because she just can't get comfortable. So
I just need
if
to
you
get
see her moving around,
if you see me moving around, it's because I'm trying to get comfortable on my bed, and if you hear a sound of a drum, it's because of this microphone right here.
oh God.
See, that hurts Agnes's ears. So if you see Agnes look a bit pained, that's also why it's probably my fault. Okay.
So that's a great jumper, Tia Poppy.
Thank you. It's a cast off. It's actually quite ugly, I'd say, but I'm enjoying it anyway. And sometimes that makes something nice.
Both of us are wearing purple today.
It's interesting. Your camera must be on the muted end because it looks grey from here.
It is purple. I'll turn up my colour.
How purple is it? Turn up your colour, did you say?
Turn up my... It's purple. It still looks grey. It does look quite grey, doesn't it?
Like it's
pink, purple. Okay.
What colours
well,
are
I'm going to start.
We'll get on with the book.
Yeah, we'll get on with the book, but we'll do our normal quick recap of what happened last chapter, because what happened last chapter?
Well, can you remember, Agnes? Because I can't. They had to take a quite big decision, I think, to like sort of go for.
Yeah, they had to just go for it.
And there was a coyote involved. Or
yes, a tricky coyote that we didn't quite trust, but was the only one that could steal the Fire of Life.
Yeah.
Fire thief. Oh, and then there was the dragons, the three Joes, past, present, and future.
Yeah. You know what?
They did a lot of transformation as well.
Yeah, I think Luca was pretty annoyed because the others had made out like someone had actually got to the Fire of Life before, but it turned out that nobody really had in the current format, because apparently the Fire of Life keeps changing.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there's only 7 of them going. I don't think Lady,
what was she called?
The Lady? Soraya, Magic Carpet Queen. Can't go.
Yeah. I think the Elephant Drake and the Elephant Duck are kind of staying behind.
Oh yeah, and there were lots of peaks that we couldn't pronounce.
Oh yes, and we meant to look them up and didn't. And we learned that word prestidigitation. Prestidigitation.
Prestidigitation.
I've forgotten what it means, but Ella, I'm sure you'll remember. So, didn't it mean like trickery or mischief or something?
Yes, I think it did.
Like that. Okay. Anyway, so
right. I'm starting.
It'll just all make sense again.
Luckily, there's a YouTube video where you can go back and listen.
And did you know, Ella, you can watch things on like double speed, which makes it really fun, and you can catch up twice as fast.
Oh,
you just press the button.
I'm terrified to know what we sound like at double speed.
Really great, much better.
Okay.
It's fireworks. It's broad daylight, Ella. There's fireworks here. Can't see them.
Chapter 7. The Fire of Life. The whole world of magic was on red alert. Jackal-headed Egyptian deities, fierce scorpion and jaguar men, giant one-eyed man-eating cyclops, flute-playing centaurs, whose pipes could entice strangers into cracks in rocks where they would be imprisoned for all time. Asrian treasure nymphs made of gold and jewels, whose precious bodies could tempt thieves into their poison whipcord nets. Flying griffins with lethal claws, flightless basilisks glaring in all directions with their deadly eyes, Valkyries on cloud horses in the sky, bull-headed minotaurs, slithering snake women, and huge rocks, larger than the one that bore Sinbad the Sailor to its nest, charged wildly across the land and through the air, answering the fire alarm, hunting. In the circular sea, after the alarm sounded, mermaids rose from the water, singing siren songs to lure the foul intruders to their doom. Enormous island-sized creatures, krakens, saratans, and monstrous rays, hung motionless on the sea's surface. If an intruder were to pause on the back of one of the beasts for a rest, it would dive and drown him, or flip over to reveal its giant mouth and its sharp triangular teeth, and swallow the trespasser down in bite-sized chunks. And most terrible of all was the gigantic worm bottom feeder, who rose blind and roaring from the sea's usually silent depths in a rage to consume the scoundrels who had triggered the fire alarm and disturbed its 2,000-year sleep. Amid the chaos of the world, the fire gods rose in all their majesty to defend the Gjör, the one bridge to the heart of the heart, the rainbow arch that crossed the sundry sea and enabled the favoured few to enter Alim's lands. Amaterasu, the Japanese sun goddess, emerged from the cave where she had sulked for 2 millennia after quarrelling with her brother, the storm god, and the magic sword Kusanagi in her hand, and rays of sunlight flying outwards from her head like spears. Beside her was the flaming child Kagutsuchi, whose burning birth had killed his mother, Itsunami the divine, and Sutru with his fiery sword, and at his elbow his fellow companion, Sinmara, also bearing a lethal sword of fire, and Irish Belle, and Polynesian Mihuika, with her fingernails of flame, and Yami Hefis.
It's a difficult set of sentences, this one, isn't it? Because also, I think that says lame and not Yami.
Yep. I'm very sorry, Anna. There's some really hard names. I feel like I got the short straw. Okay, I'll carry on.
Hephaestus.
And lame Hephaestus, the smith of Olympus, with his pale Roman echo Vulcan at his side. And Inti of the Incus, the sun, with the human face. And the Aztec Tonatiuh, thirsty for blood. Tonatiuh, the former lord of the fifth world, to please whom 20,000 people used to be sacrificed each year. Hang on.
Just to clarify, basically, they're in a world and there's a lot of fire gods.
I think all the gods have come.
All of those different people with the funny names that Agnes pronounced in funny ways
I'm not doing a good job, am I?
Were fire gods who were rising to defend their majesty.
Yeah. And towering above them all, like a giant pillar in the sky, was falcon-headed Ra of Egypt, his piercingly sharp bird eyes searching for the would-be thieves, with Bennu bird sitting on his shoulder, the grey heron that was the Egyptian phoenix, and his mighty weapons, the wadjets, the discs of the sun, held urgently in his hands. These great colossi guarded the bridge and waited with clouds at their foreheads and murder in their eyes. Inhabitants of the Heart of Magic rushed freely across the bridge in both directions, hunting, but for the hunted intruders. Luca thought there appeared to be no way past the falcon eyes of Ra. Luca, hiding with his companions behind the rhododendron bushes, had the feeling that the thicket was shrinking and dwindling away and becoming a less and less adequate shelter. His heart was beating too rapidly. Things were definitely getting scary. The good thing about those ex-gods, said Soraya comfortingly, is that they're all stuck in their old stories. I'm sure the firebug will have reported accurately to the Alim, a boy, a dog, a bear, he will have said, but when the fire alarm goes off, everyone here inadvertently starts hunting for the usual suspects. Who are the usual suspects? Luca wanted to know. He realised he was whispering, and that he wished Soraya would lower her voice as well. Oh, the ones who were fire thieves in the times and places in which these gods were the gods, Soraya said, waving an arm airily. You know, or, she added, reverting to her old insultana habits. Maybe you're too ignorant. Maybe your father didn't teach you as much as he should have. Maybe he didn't know himself. Then, seeing the expression on Luca's face, she softened her voice and relented. The Algonquin Indians got Rabbit to steal the fire for them, she said, and you know about Coyote already. Beaver and Nanabozu, the shapeshifter, did the same for the other tribes. Possum tried and failed, but then Grandmother Spider stole fire from the Cherokee in a clay urn, which reminds me, Soraya paused for thought, that you will need this. She was holding a little clay pot in her hands. Luca looked inside it. A small group of what looked like half a dozen black potatoes nestled on a bed of twigs. This, said Soraya, is one of the famous Ott pots, and there inside it are a few of the famous Ott potatoes. Once the fire of life touches them, they'll burn brightly and they won't easily be put out. She hung the pot around his neck by its leather strap. Where was I? She thought for a minute, then resumed. Oh, yes, Maui, that's Maui Tiki Tiki Ataranga to you, stole fire from the fingernails of the fire goddess Mahika and gave it to the Polynesians. She'll definitely be on the lookout for him, and so on. You neglected to include the first chief, Coyote said, oldest and the greatest, king of the hill, inspiration to us all, stole it for all mankind. The Titan Prometheus, Soraya said, was the brother, oddly enough, of your friend, the late, unlamented Captain Arg. Not that they ever got on. Couldn't stand each other, in fact. Anyhow, 3,400,000 years ago, the old boy was indeed the first of the fire thieves. But after what happened to him back then, the searchers will probably not be on the lookout for another fire run by the old fellow. He lost his nerve, Luke remembered. That warn't right for me to mention, Coyote said. 'Tain't proper to dishonor the great, but since Hercules shot the eagle, the old boy lives pretty quiet. All the vulture, Lucas said, all the vulture. Want none of us there at the time to verify, and the old boy, he don't talk so much no more. And another good thing about all this rushing about, Soraya murmured in Luca's ear, is that it will allow you to get close to the bridge. If you rush about too and look like you're searching for themselves, they'll all be looking for me and my associates, Coyote said. Best we part ways. It's fixing to get kindly heated in my vicinity, but look for me to make my run, and then you put your best foot forward or make yours. He loped away without another word. All at once, Luca realised that Nobodaddy had disappeared. 1 minute he'd been there, listening, fidgeting, with his Panama hat. Then without so much as a poof, he was nowhere to be seen. What's he up to? I'd very much like to know, Luca thought. I don't feel good about him vanishing like this. Soraya put her hand on his shoulder. You're better off without him, she said. Then Nuthog, the red dragon, had her idea, and Luca put Nobodaddy out of his mind. Once upon a time, our sister, Gyra Jin, helped the king of the horses escape from Sniffleheim, said the red dragon, nodding at her golden sibling. Yes, that mighty, slippy, that gigantic white 8-legged steed with 2 legs at each corner, so to speak, had been arbitrarily, unfairly imprisoned there by Alim, just as my sisters were until Queen Soraya here set them free by her own powerful magic. The 3 Joes had decided there was no place in all of time for an 8-legged wonder horse. Just like that, decided it, without any discussion, like tyrants, with no consideration for anyone's feelings, Slippy's feelings included. They can be cruel and wanton and willful when they want to be, even though they pridefully call themselves the 3 inevitable truths. Anyhow, it was Jin here who freed Slippy with her dragonfire. Her breath is hotter than mine, or Badler's, or Salah's, and proved hot enough to melt the eternal ice, which ours did not. In return, the king of the horses gave her a magnificent gift, the power to change, just once, whenever the need might be very great, into an exact replica of Slippy himself. No god will dare to search Slippy, the king of horses, as he passes over Vibgyor. Will strap in each of you, Luca, and your dog and bear, between one of the pairs of legs, which leaves 1 pair of legs for you, Queen Soraya, if you would like. No, Soraya said sadly. Even with the flying carpet of King Solomon folded away, I'm afraid the presence of the Sultana of Ott will not help you, Luca. I've been too offensive about those cold, stuffy, punishing, implacable, destructive old Joes for too long, and they have no time for me. It will go worse for you if I am at your side. I will not enter the heart of the heart ever again, that's the truth. I have no wish to end up in Sniffleheim, imprisoned in an ice sheet, but I will wait for you and speed you to safety, if that is to say when you return with the blazing hot potatoes in that little op. You'd do this for me, Lucas said to the golden dragon. You'd use up this one-time change just to help me win through? I don't know how to thank you enough. We owe everything to Queen Soraya, said Gyara Jin. that is the person whom you need to thank.
So, just to clarify, what happened just then?
I think there was a lot
Soraya's
of building.
not going in with them.
No, and they're going to
She's
strap.
annoyed them too much before.
They're going to strap everybody in between the legs of the 8-legged horse called Slippy.
Who came from where?
Looks like Slippy was a king's steed.
And then just appeared.
No, I think Slippy was a king's steed, and when they freed them, they just decided he wasn't useful anymore, so he stopped existing. But as a reward for freeing this beast, whoever the king is, or whoever the powerful was, gave the dragons the ability to change once. And so they're going to change into a replica of this horse.
Okay, so the Titan Prometheus, who happened to be Captain Ag's brother, but that's irrelevant, was the one who said to the 3 dragons, they can have one more. They can have one transformation. Mm-hmm. Okie doke. Right. Ella, you have to forgive me. That was quite complicated, I felt. There were a lot of people in it.
There were a lot. I think a lot of this.
And I didn't. What about the op pot with the potatoes? I'm a bit confused about that.
I think that's just like an op. So the op potatoes in the op pot,
which is like
a way to carry.
Which you get when you get out of the bath and you blow on your arm through the towel.
That's a way to carry the fire of life. I think it was very complicated because basically the scene was being set a lot of fire gods with very complicated names, and that meant that it was very hard for me to explain the story.
The main thing that I got from that was that although there's loads of fire gods and they're searching for these intruders, they're actually quite involved with themselves, quite self-involved. So they're just looking for people who previously, when they were like in the normal world, were like stealing the fire.
Previously tried to steal the fire.
They're a bit distracted, which I think personally bodes well for Luca.
Yep.
Okay, right. Sorry about that, Ella. I'm sure you understood that all first time. Okay. Who could have imagined, Luca told himself ruefully, that I, Luca Khalifa, aged only 12, would be crossing the great bridge Vibgyor, the most beautiful bridge in the entire magical world, a bridge built entirely of rainbows and brushed by the west wind, gentlest of all winds, blown softly from the lips of the god Zephyr himself, and yet the only thing I can see and feel is the bristly hair on a giant horse's inner thighs. Who would have thought that out there are some of the greatest names in the history of the unseen world, the names of the once worshipped, once omnipotent divinities with whom I grew up, about whom I heard each night in my father's endless supply of bedtime stories, the sword Kusanagi, the ex-gods Tanutia, Vulcan, Surtur, and Bel, and the Bedu bird and Ra the Supreme, and yet I can't even catch a glimpse of them or allow them to get the tiniest glimpse of me. Who would have believed that I, Luca, would be entering the garden of perfect perfumes which circles the lake of wisdom and is the sweetest smelling place in all of existence, and yet the only thing I can smell is horse? He could hear noises such as he had never heard in his life, the shriek of a falcon, the hiss of a snake, the roar of a lion, the burning of the sun, all magnified beyond imagining and almost beyond endurance, the war cries of the gods. The changer Gyara Jin, in the form of the king of horses, whinnied, neighed, stamped her, or for the moment his, 8 feet in response, and the intruders concealed between her, or for the moment his, legs shook and cringed. Luca didn't like to imagine how bear and dog were feeling. Underneath the horse, wedged in between its legs, was no place for a dog or a bear. There must be a certain loss of pride involved, and he was upset to be the reason for their feelings of shame. He was leading them into great danger, too. He knew that, but he had to close his mind to that thought if he was to stand any chance of doing what was needed to be done. I am exploiting their love and loyalty, he thought. It seems there is no such thing as a purely good deed, a completely right action. Even this task, for which I took on for the very best of reasons, involves making choices that are not good, choices that might even be wrong. In his mind's eye, he saw again the faces of Queen Soraya and the memory birds, as they had looked when he said his farewells. Their eyes were moist with tears, and he knew it was because they feared they would never see him again. To this thought, too, he needed to close his mind. He was going to prove them all wrong. If a thing had never been done before, that only meant it was still waiting for the one who could pull it off. See how narrow I have become, he thought. I have turned myself into a single, inevitable thing. I am an arrow speeding towards a target. Nothing must deflect from my chosen course. Somewhere in the sky up above him were Nuthog, Badlo, and Sara flying in formation in their dragon incarnations. That rhymed. Sorry. There was no turning back now. The 7 of them had entered the inner sanctum of the Alim with crime in their hearts. The country below them was filled with wonders, but there was no time for sightseeing. All his life, ever since Rashid Khalifa started telling him stories, Luca had wondered about the torrent of words that fell to earth from the Sea of Stories, which was up above the world on its invisible second moon. What would that look like, that waterfall tumbling from space? It must be wonderful to behold. Surely it would splash like an explosion into the lake of wisdom. Yet Rashid had always said that the lake of wisdom was calm and still because wisdom could absorb even the largest rush of words without being disturbed. There at the lake it was always dawn. The long, pale fingers of the first light rested quietly on the surface of the waters, and the silver sun peeped over the horizon but did not rise. The Alim who controlled time had chosen to live at the beginning of it forever. Luca could close his eyes and see it all. He could listen and hear his father's voice describing the scene, but now that he was actually there, it was very frustrating not to be able to take a look. And where was Nobodaddy? Still no place to be seen, thought Luca, who was surer with every passing minute that the missing phantom was up to no good wherever he was. I will have to face him before the end, I'm sure of that, he thought. And it isn't going to be easy, but if he thinks I'll give up my dad to him without a fight, he's going to be very much surprised. Then he was struck, as if by a powerful fist, by the worst thought in the world. Had Nobodaddy gone because Rashid Khalifa had had finally, before Luca could save him, gone too? Had the phantom who was absorbing his father vanished because its purpose had been achieved? Was all of this in vain? Luca began to tremble at the thought, and his eyes grew wet and prickly, and grief began to flood over him in the great shuddering waves. But then something happened. Luca became aware of a change within himself. He felt as if something more powerful than his own nature had taken control of him. Some will stronger than his own that was refusing to accept the worst. No, Rashid's life was not over. It could not be, therefore it was not. The will stronger than Luca's own rejected that possibility, nor would it allow Luca to give up, to flinch in the face of danger or cower in the face of terror. This new force that had gripped him was giving him the strength and courage he would need if he was going to do what needed to be done. It felt like something not himself, something from outside, and yet he also knew that it was coming from within him, that it was his own strength, his own determination, his own refusal of defeat, his own strong will. For this, too, Rashid Khalifa's storytelling, the Shah of Blaz, many tales of young heroes finding extra resources within themselves in the face of horrible adversity, had prepared him. We don't know the answers to the great questions of who we are and what we are capable of, Rashid liked to say, until the questions are asked. Then and only then do we know if we can answer them or not. And above and beyond Rashid's stories lay the example of Luca's brother Haroun, who had found such an answer in himself, afloat on the sea of stories once upon a time. I wish my brother was here to help me, Luca thought. But he isn't. Not really, even though Dog the bear is speaking in his voice and trying to take care of me. So I'm going to do what he would have done. I am not going to lose. Am I carrying on?
Yeah, until next bit.
Oh yeah, sorry, one more page. Pardon me. The Alim are set in their ways and dislike people who try to rock the boat, Rashid Khalifa had told the sleepy Luca one night. Their view of time is strict and flexible. Yesterday, then today, then tomorrow, tick-tock, tick. They are like robots marching along to the beat of the disappearing seconds. What was, Zhou Hua, lives in the past. What is, Zhou Hai, simply is right now. And what will come, Zhou Aiga, belongs to a place we cannot go. Their time is a prison. They are the jailers, and the seconds and minutes are its walls. Dreams Are the Alim's enemies because in dreams the laws of time disappear? We know, don't we know, Luca, that the Alim's laws do not tell the truth about time. The time of our feelings is not the same as the time of the clocks. We know that when we are excited by what we are doing, time speeds up, and when we are bored, it slows down. We know that at moments of great excitement or anticipation, at wonderful moments, time can stand still. Our dreams are the real truths, our fancies, the knowledge of our hearts. We know that time is a river, not a clock, and that it can flow the wrong way, so that the world becomes more backward instead of less, and that it can jump sideways, so that everything changes in an instant. We know that the river of time can loop and twist and carry us back to yesterday or forwards to the day after tomorrow. There are places in the world where nothing ever happens and time stops moving altogether. There are those of us who go on being 17 years old all our life and never grow up. There are others who are miserable old wretches, maybe 60 or 70 years old from the day they are born. We know that when we fall in love, time ceases to exist, and we also know that time can repeat itself so that you can be stuck in one day for the whole of your life. We know that time is not only itself, but is an aspect of movement and space. Imagine two boys, let's say you and young Ratchet, who both wear wristwatches that are perfectly synchronized and that both keep perfect time. Now imagine that the lazy rascal Ratchet sits in the same place, let's say right here, for 100 years while you run, never resting, all the way to school and back here again over and over, also for 100 years. At the end of that century, both your watches would have kept perfect time, but your watch would be 6 or 7 seconds slower than his. There are those of us who learn to live completely in the moment. For such people, the past vanishes and the future loses meaning. There is only the present, which means that two of the three Alim are surplus to requirements. And then there are those of us who are trapped in yesterdays, in the memory of a lost love or a childhood home or a dreadful crime. And some people live only for a better tomorrow. For them, the past ceases to exist. I've spent my life telling people that this is the truth about time and that the Alim's clocks tell lies. So naturally, the Alim are my mortal enemies, which is just fine, because as a matter of fact, I am their deadly foe.
The changer, Gyarajan, stopped galloping, slowed down to a walk, then stopped completely and began to change. The giant, 8-legged horse started becoming smaller. Its hairy skin vanished and was replaced by a smooth, shiny surface. The smell of horse faded away, and Luca's nostrils were filled instead by a far less palatable odour of the pig pen. Finally, the 8 legs became 4, so that Luca, bear, and dog slipped out of their bindings and tumbled what was now only a short distance to the admittedly stony ground. Gyarajan's once-in-a-lifetime transformation into the king of horses had come to an end, and she was a tin sow once again. But Luca wasn't paying any attention to that dramatic change because he was staring, open-mouthed, at the heart-stopping sight he had come so far to see. He was standing at the foot of the vast massif of the Mountain of Knowledge, and just a few feet away, lapping at the mountain's feet, was the Lake of Wisdom itself, its water clear, pure, and transparent in the pale silvery light of the dawn of days, which never brightened into morn. Cool shadows stretched across the water, as always, caressing and smoothing it. It was a ghostly scene, at once haunted and haunting, and it was easy to imagine music in the air, a tinkling crystal melody, the legendary music of the spheres that had played when the world was born. The Shah of Blan's description of this lake and its inhabitants, which Luke had heard so often that he knew it by heart, proved to be startlingly accurate. Shining schools of little canny fish could be seen below the surface, as well as the brightly coloured smarty-pans and the duller deep-water shrews. Flying low over the water surface were the hunter birds, the large pelican-billed Scholarius, and the bald, bearded, long-beaked gurus. Long tendrils of the lake floor plant called Sagacity were visible, waving in the depths, and Luke recognised the lake's little groups of islands too, the Theres, with their wild, improbable growths, the tangled forests, the ivory towers of the philosophiles, and the bare facts. In it, I said right. If I said it right, right? Okay, let me say that again because Poperi interrupted.
Sorry, they're just really fun words, Ella. And I'm a pedant.
Long tendrils of the lake floor plant called Sagacity were visible waving in the depths, and Luca recognized the lake's little groups of islands too, the theories, with their wild, improbable growths, the tangled forests, and the ivory towers of the philosophiles, and the bare facts. In the distance was what Luca had longed to behold, the torrent of worlds, the miracle of miracles, the grand waterfall that tumbled down from the clouds and linked the world of magic to the moon of the great story sea above. They had given the hunters the slip and arrived at the notorious south face of knowledge without being caught, but looming above Luca was an obstacle far more forbidding than he had imagined. The sheer cliff of the mountain, a rugged wall of black stone upon which no plant had managed to find a foothold. If a plant can't do it, how can I? Luca wondered in dismay. What sort of a mountain is this anyway? He knew the answer. It was the Magic Mountain, and it knew how to protect itself. Knowledge is both a delight and an explosive minefield, both a liberation and a trap, Rashid used to say. The way to knowledge shifts and changes as the world changes and shifts. One day it is open and available to all. The next it is closed and guarded. Some people skip up that mountain as if it were a grassy slope in a park. For others, it is an impassable wall. Lucas scratched the top of his head, just the way his father liked to do. I guess I'm one of the others, he thought, because that doesn't look like any grassy slope I've ever seen. To be blunt, the mountain looked impossible to climb without serious mountaineering equipment, to say nothing of the proper training, and Luca lacked both. Somewhere above him, at the top of that world of stone, the fire of life burned in a temple, and there was no way of knowing where that cave might be or how to go about finding it. Luca's principal advisors were no longer at his side. Queen Soraya of Art had not crossed the Rainbow Bridge, and the much less trustworthy but formidably well-informed Nobodaddy had evidently decided, for whatever reason, and no, not that one, to withdraw his support. Might I remind you, said the voice of Nuthork in gentle tones, that you do still have help available. With that help possesses, may I point out, wings? Nuthog, Badlo, and Sarah were still in dragon mode, and Jin quickly dragonized herself as well. With 4 fast dragons at your service, you should be able to reach the fire temple quickly enough, Nuthog said, particularly if those 4 fast dragons happen to know where on the summit the temple actually is. To know approximately, said Badlo rather more modestly. We think, anyway, said Sarah, that didn't sound convincing at all. At any rate, added Jin more helpfully, before we get going, it would probably be a good idea if you punched that. That was a silver knob embedded in the stone wall of the south face. It looks like a saving point, Luca said. But why is it silver, not gold? The gold button is in the temple, said Nuthog, but at least you can save the progress you've made so far. And be careful, from now on, every mistake you make could cost you 100 lives. That was alarming, Luca thought, as he punched the silver button. It left almost no room for mistakes. 465 lives allowed him 4 slip-ups, maximum. Besides, while Nuthog's offer of flying him up to his goal was certainly generous and practical too, Luca clearly remembered his father's word about the mountain of knowledge. If you want to reach the summit of the mountain and discover the fire of life, you must make the final ascent alone. The heights of the knowledge are reached only if you earn the right to do so. You have to put in the hard work. You can't cheat your way to the top. He had said something else after that, and Luca remembered thinking that the last bit was really the important part, but he couldn't call it to mind. That's the trouble, he thought. With being told all this stuff at night, you're always dead tired and falling asleep. Thank you very much, said Luca to Nuthog, but I think I'm supposed to solve this riddle and get there by myself. To fly up on your back, well, It just wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
For some reason, that idea, not right, stuck in his head. The words kept replaying again and again, as if his thoughts had become stuck like a scratched record or caught in some sort of loop. Not right, not right. What was the thing if it was not right? Well, yes, wrong. That was what most people would say, but it could also be left, he said aloud. That's the answer. I went right and fell into the world of magic. Now maybe if somehow I go left, I'll find my way through it. Luca remembered his big brother Haroon's many teasing warnings back home in Kahani, which felt just at that moment very far away indeed. Just be careful not to go down the left-hand path. That's what Haroon had said. But I don't like being teased, Luca reminded himself, and so maybe I should do the opposite of what he said. Yes, just this once, I'm not going to listen to my brother's advice because right-thinking people can never really understand what it is to be on the left, and that hidden path is exactly the path that will get me where I need to go. After all, his mother Soraya would be on his side. Maybe you are correct to believe that the left way round is the right way, and that the rest of us are not right but wrong. That's what she had said, and that was more than enough for him. I'll go with you, said Bear the dog loyally. I'll go too, said Dog the bear, not quite as enthusiastically. And then Luca recalled the really important part of what Rashid Khalifa had told him about the mountain. To climb Mount Knowledge, you have to know who you are. Luca, sleepy, bedtime Luca at home far away and long ago, hadn't really understood. Doesn't everyone know that? He had asked. I mean, I'm just me, right? And you're you. Rashid had caressed his hair, which always soothed Luca and made him drowsy. People think they're all sorts of things they aren't, he had said. They think they're talented when they're not. They think they're powerful when actually they're just bullies. They think they're good when they're bad. People fool themselves all the time, and they don't know that they're fools. Well, I'm me anyway. That's all there is to it, Luca had said, just as he had fallen asleep.
There he is. There's the fire thief. There he goes. It's Coyote. He has a burning brand between his teeth. Look at him go. See him dodge and swerve. Stop him. Oh, they'll never catch him. Stop that Coyote. Oh, he's like hairy lightning. Stop, thief. Stop the fire thief. Lucas snapped out of his reverie and saw Coyote emerging from the shadows at the foot of Mount Knowledge with fire blazing from his mouth and streaking round the mountain towards its far side, running faster than Luca would have believed it was possible for a coyote to run. He was heading across stony ground in the opposite direction from the Rainbow Bridge, leading his pursuers deliberately away from Luca's probable escape route and into the wild waste that lay beyond the lake. This was an area of semi-desert, more properly known as the Waste of Time, a large expanse of arid land which had been overrun long ago by a virulent outbreak of slackerweed. This rapidly spreading weed, previously unknown in the magic world, had first choked and destroyed all other plant life except for a few of the hardiest cacti, and then bizarrely self-destructed as if it had no idea what to do with itself and no real desire to find out. It just lay apathetically on the ground until it withered away, leaving behind this yellow wilderness dotted with the skulls of long-dead creatures. Snakes slithered out from under rocks and buzzards wheeled overhead, and it was well known that the gods, accustomed as they were to luxury and opulence, were not fond of entering this zone, where Rashid Khalifa had told Luca the air moved slowly, the breeze blew without any real sense of direction, and there was something in that wind that induced carelessness, laziness, and sleep. Only a few of the guardian deities who had answered the fire alarm had been willing to follow Coyote into the waste, and their pursuit of the fleeing animal seemed slower, groggier, and less purposeful than it should have been. Coyote, however, seemed immune to the infectious lethargy in the air. The wild waste is his natural habitat, Luca thought. He'll give those gods a good run for their money there. And positioned at intervals along the route Coyote had chosen were the lion, the big bear, the little bear, the wolf, the squirrel, and the frog. Would the waste of time affect them, Luca wondered, or had Coyote discovered an antidote? It wasn't important. The decoy relay had begun. He heard Coyote's voice in his head saying, "Put your best foot forward and make your glory run." And all around him were excited dragons and a barking dog and a roaring bear. And Nuthog was saying, "It's now or never, young Luca. And if you can't find the way left, as you say, then you'd best let us fly you up there and take your chances. Move. This is the moment of truth." Who are those monsters chasing Coyote? Luca needed to know. If you don't act fast, Nuthog harumphed, panicked. They'll be chasing you instead. Soon enough, Saturn's out there, as savage and violent as any immortal. He eats children, by the way. He's done it before with his own. And the bearded fellow with the snake wound around him is Zurvan, the Persian time god. You don't want to let that snake get within snapping distance, let me tell you. There goes the Dagda. Look, that wild Irish fellow with the enormous club. And Zutruchli, too. Though he... That's another Aztec word. Ella, I'm so sorry. Though he usually only roams about at night. And even Ling Pao Tiansun, they got him out of the Gossamer Library for once. Looks like they really want to stop the fire thief. And when they find out that fire in Coyote's mouth is a fake, that it's just fire and not the fire of life, then they'll know he was only a decoy and they'll come after the real fire thief in all their fury. So if you know how to climb up this mountain under your own steam, it will be a good idea to get on with it. To decide to do a thing was decidedly not the same thing as actually doing the thing, Luca quickly understood. He really had no idea how exactly he was supposed to take the little tumble to the left that would shift him into the Widdershins dimension in which the whole world, including the world of magic, would morph into planet Wrong Way, the left-hander's home, the southpaw variation of planet Earth. He tried falling, jumping, and rolling to the left. He attempted to trip over his own feet. He asked Bear and Dog to knock him over, and finally, closing his eyes, he tried to feel the left world pushing at his left shoulder so that, by pushing back, he could fall through the invisible frontier and get to where he needed to be. None of it worked. His many falls left him considerably the worse for wear, bruised of shoulder and of hip, and with a battered and scratched left leg. "It beats me," he admitted, almost in despair. "The thing about the left-hand path," said Nuthog gently, "is that you have to believe it's going to be there." Just then, a triumphant blast of the fire alarm announced the capture of the fire thief, followed by two blasts of renewed anguish that announced the hunt was still on. Nuthog whizzed off to investigate as soon as she heard the first blast, and returned to report that after the decoy fire had been passed from Coyote to Lion, and then all the way down the old relay team until it reached Frog, that doughty amphibian had swallowed it and dived into the circular sea, whereupon the enraged worm bottom feeder had ended the carrera de distraction by swallowing Frog in a single greedy gulp. 4 seconds later, bottom feeder spat the saliva-coated Frog out again and roared with all its might to announce to the entire magical world that this particular fire thief was a common fraud. "They're all coming this way now," Nuthog panted, "and to be frank, they're mad as hell. So you won't let us fly you away from here. So if you won't let us fly you away from here, then at least run for your life." Yes, I should probably start running, Luca thought. After all, I was running before when I stumbled the first time and took that magical step to the right. It was hard to be certain of the laws of magical physics. Ordinary physics was difficult enough. But what was it Rashid had said? Time is not only itself, but is an aspect of movement and space. That was the point, wasn't it? So, Luca thought, if T is affected by M and S, then therefore it follows, doesn't it, that S, which is to say space, including the space between the right-handed and the left-handed dimensions, must probably, right, be an aspect of T and M, i.e. time and movement. Or to put it in English, it makes a difference how long it takes you to make your move, or in other words, how fast you run. The ground began to tremble. "Is it an earthquake?" Luca cried. "No," said Nuthog sadly, "it's much worse than that. It's the sound of several hundred angry gods moving at speed. It will take a lot more than 4 dragons to stop that crowd." Dog the bear stepped forward with sudden resolution. "You go," he said to Luca. "Go this minute. Take off. Bag Jow, Amsgrave, Amus. Go and do the deed. Bear and I can hold them up for quite a while." "How?" said Nuthog skeptically. "By doing what we do best," said Dog the bear. "Are you ready, Bear?" "Ready," said Bear the dog. Luca knew there was no time to discuss the matter. He turned to his left, tilted his left shoulder down a bit, put his left foot forward, and set off at a gallop as if his life depended on it, which, in point of fact, it did. He ran without looking back. He heard the noise behind him, already loud, getting closer, growing much louder and becoming deafening, like the sound of 1,000 jet engines roaring next to his eardrums. He felt the ground beneath his feet, which had already been trembling, begin to shake, as if it had been seized by an uncontrollable terror. He saw the sky above him darken, and white lightning begin to stab through the black clouds. Okay, so they can put on a show, these gods, he told himself to keep his courage up. But remember, they aren't gods of anywhere or anyone anymore. They're just circus animals or caged creatures in a zoo. With a less confident voice whispered in his right ear, that may be so, but even in a zoo, you shouldn't jump into the middle of the lion's den. He shook this thought off, put his head down, and sprinted harder. Nuthog's advice was the only thing in his head. The thing about the left-hand path is you have to believe it's going to be there. Then all at once the noise seemed to stop. The earth no longer shook. He felt as if he were floating at high speed rather than running, and that was when he saw the abyss. Behind the mountain of knowledge, Rashid Khalifa used to say, if you are very unlucky, you will find the bottomless pit, known as the abysm of time. And that, by the by, is a rhyme. You pronounce it abeam, and it rhymes with rhyme. You pronounce it abime, and it rhymes with rhyme, which also rhymes with time. Let's just start the sentence again. So, if you are very unlucky, said Rashid Khalifa, you will find the bottomless pit, known, wait for it, as the abime of time. And that, by the way, is a rhyme. You pronounce it abime, and it rhymes with rhyme, which also rhymes with time. But if you fall into that rhyming abime, it isn't rhyme that you will have on your mind.
Oh.
Wow. That was quite a profound little paragraph on time there that Rashid Khalifa.
Can we look up a word?
Yeah, what?
Doughty.
Abime.
Doughty.
You know what, Ella?
Doughty.
I've read Doughty several times in my life, and I've never bothered to look it up. Are you looking it up, Agnes?
I was hoping you will, but I'll do
my
it.
laptop. I can't reach the keyboard. See?
Yeah.
Far away. Doughty. Sounds like something they'd say up in Scotland.
Brave
Doughty.
and persistent.
Brave and persistence. So where was that?
So
Where
it was the Doughty
say?
amphibian.
Doughty amphibian, which is a great set of words.
I also underlined.
You're taking notes.
Flying in formation in their dragon incarnation.
I like that, yeah. Flying in formation in their dragon incarnation.
Yeah, I like that one.
But if you fall into that rhyming abime, it isn't rhyme that you'll have on your mind.
That was my favourite thing that you did, which is the bottomless pit, known as the abysm of time. You pronounce it a beam, and it rhymes with rhyme.
But sometimes, you've got to read ahead to know these things, Ella. And
it's really hard to read ahead.
But it's quite difficult, which is why sometimes you say something in a really cheery voice, and then the next sentence is cried so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I don't think I got that quite right.
We're trying to get better at reading, Ella, but it's quite difficult.
And Ella, you'll have to let us know if you're listening, because it's very funny just speaking to ourselves. But we are actually enjoying ourselves, so don't worry if you're not.
Right, so next week, end of chapter 7.
Saga City.
Saga City.
Which I think is probably Sagacity, because it's about the Lake of Wisdom, because it's about sage, like being sage. So I like Saga City.
Sometimes I make up words.
There's quite a lot of words which once you've got to commit when you said them the first time. Like I think Nuthog, maybe we should have called him Nuthog, because I kind of imagine him as a bit of a pig. There's a few others, but it's funny because you don't know that until you've gone for it, and then it's important.
Quite like Nuthog.
I really like the Wild Waste, which is like the Wild West, but the Wild Waste where everyone's just really like lethargic, just slows down. Anyway, so that's that, Ella. That was only half a chapter. Very long one. The next one, we've got all the wiggledy-piggledy characters.
Yeah, we'll give you some examples, but we're going to have to make up a new language. Yeah.
Perhaps you could spend the week doing that, Ella, and let us know what it is. If you could assign sounds to each of these characters, we'd be much obliged. Make our life very easy. Right. Well, we're not long off the end, are we? So
we are not.
We've got a couple of chapters, couple more goes, I reckon.
Okie dokie. I think we're going to stop recording. Bye, Ella.
Okie dokie.
Have a lovely week.
Bye, Ella.